So this is going to be a quick look at the actual internal coding for the data headquarters art catalog add-in. I'm in Microsoft Visual Studio, and all the coding was done in C#. So if I look over here at the Solution Explorer, here's my solution, data headquarters, and start to see these C# files are the actual buttons. So these are pretty simple. It's just saying create a new form and show it. So there's one for each of the 4 buttons. And there's also the Esri add-in configuration file. So this is basically just configuring it's actually a toolbar, and then it orders the buttons within the menu here. And then here are the actual buttons. The Esri add-in really configures a lot of that for you. But then without any actual forms to show, these wouldn't do anything. So I had to create these forms. So here's the visual part, and I can make that look however I want. And then I can also view the code that actually runs when you click the Create New Client button. So here, this first part is some if-else statements that are checking that all the data is actually filled in. So if any of it is null or empty, it then figures out which one is null or empty and gives the appropriate message. And then it refreshes the form so that you can't continue on. So then here it's doing things like getting the text that was entered. So getting the client name input. And then it creates a new folder using that client name. So here it's taking out spaces, it's setting the root path to the CGIS database, and then it creates the folder here with the create directory command. Then to write that data to the DHQ geodatabase, it has to create a geodatabase factory. From there, I can open the geodatabase, and then it opens a specific table, so clients. Then it's going to create a new query filter, basically. So it's searching the database to see if this one already exists. And that occurs down here. So it's basically looping through anything it finds, and if it finds one, it gives this error. If it doesn't find one, so this I equals 0, which means it didn't find one up here, then it adds the row to the DHQ database. So it takes the positions and it adds the appropriate text. Then here's how I refresh in the appropriate area. We looked at this in a earlier slide. So one thing I should point out here is this kind of all runs the code together. So if I wanted to add other parts to this, and maybe you would end up having to repeat this code. So what I've done in later parts, like the more detailed project info part, well, that one does it too. For like view project info, I basically am starting to pull out these attribute names ahead of time. And then depending on which scenario or button is clicked, it'll run a method that's stored here. So that way I can reference it multiple times without having to retype the code or have it in multiple places. If I need to change it, it only has to change in one place. So like the update project or view project form basically figures out what the selected project is, it gets the project info, and then it loads it into the form. So it then calls these methods to accomplish that. So a lot of this is similar to what we were looking at on the client page. It creates the factory, opens the file geodatabase, opens the project folder, figures out which folder was selected, then it adds data for that folder. Or sorry, it's looking data up here. So once it gets all that data, then it calls this load project info method, which actually loads the data. Here are some other methods for add notes and edit notes, delete notes, which isn't finished yet. Anyway, that's a quick look at some of the coding behind the scenes of the ARC catalog data headquarters add-in.